Good afternoon and welcome to Manor Solutions Connect Symposium. Thank you for attending today's session, which is the Enhanced Budgeting and Reporting in the Cloud. I will be your host, Caitlin, and your presenter today will be James Meyer and Jessica Myers. James has been helping people implement and select ERP systems for over 30 years. And Jessica has been a GP expert consultant for over 10. At this time, I will hand this over to James Meyer, and he will take it from here. Enjoy.
All right. Thanks, Kate. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Just want to make sure. Hi, everybody. And we're excited to be here today and talk to you a little bit about enhanced budgeting and reporting. We are going to be primarily showcasing one of the products that we sell and support called Solver. On behalf of Jessica and myself, like I say, we're glad to have this opportunity. The agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about the changing world out there in finance, how you can move from manual to automated processes, or how the solution can help you. Then we'll give you actually a live overview of Solver, a product overview, and then Jessica is going to actually show you how easy it is to create a report like budget versus actual reports or budget worksheets in Solver. And then we'll wrap up and be happy if we have time to answer any questions that you might have. So let's talk a little bit about the changing world. I think there's three main things going on right now. First of all, we all know there's just more data all the time. We have lots of data. Business things are moving faster now. Recently, the last few months have been a little slower, but hopefully we'll get back to that faster pace again. But the other thing is just changing roles, where really what we're seeing a lot of our users do, and what we're trying to help our users do, is we're trying to help users move from where they're spending all their time manipulating information to where you really are be able to use that data to make decisions and be more analyst and futurist versus just handling historical information. Now, those are three things. There's a fourth one right now that I think is very relevant, which is, I don't know how we can do a session without mentioning COVID-19, but really what COVID-19 does is make it kind of, at this point, a somewhat unpredictable future. We just don't know how fast things are going to turn around, and as we get back into business, excited we're going to getting back into business, but how fast is that going to happen, and what impacts that going to have? So because of that, we need to have tools that can help us really go through and not only create budgets, but also make revisions to those budgets and do forecasts and do different scenarios and what if analysis. And so that's what Solver can help you do. It's a tremendous tool in that regard. So our goal today is to show you how we can help you basically make better decisions as we move forward in this world. You can't talk about budgeting unless you talk about Excel. And what we see is most of our clients that we work with today, in fact, I think I saw somewhere like 95% of companies use Excel for their budgeting, if they do budgeting. And the problem with that, or the challenge with that, is especially if you get a lot of people involved, is you just end up with too many spreadsheets. I've got different versions. I've got people going in and breaking formulas, etc. How do you distribute them? How do you manage that whole process? How can people make comments and feed that back, and how does that roll up? There's just lots of little challenges that come up when you're dealing with spreadsheets. So we call that the Spreadsheet Juggler. Ideally, what we want to do is we want to move into a more structured process where we've got it integrated with all of our different data sources, where it's parameter driven, where there's workflow with approvals, where people can make comments and they're going to roll up and everybody can see the comments. And then once you have that, so I can do this dynamic forecasting modeling. So that's that decision optimizer. And that's what Solver can do for you. So Solver itself actually there's four components that we'll talk about here. The first one is and we're going to focus on mostly today is the budgeting. So it's a very strong budgeting engine for managing your budgets. But it also has reporting, because it doesn't, your budgets are only so good. I have to take those budgets, and I need, in order to be able to use them to help me make decisions, I have to be able to have reports and dashboards that show me where I stand versus my budget. So there's a reporting engine in here. And then, but all of that is driven on top of a data warehouse. So in order to be able to have one source of truth and be able to maintain multiple versions of budgets and forecasts, and be able to do version control, you have to have a data warehouse where all this data is stored. So we'll talk a little bit about the data warehouse when we get into the demo and how that's stored. And then the fourth component is the ability to generate dashboards. And one of the nice things about Solver is they're not trying to be all things to all people. What Solver does is it gives you a world-class budgeting and reporting tool. But then what they've done is, rather than try to reinvent the wheel, they've essentially taken advantage of Microsoft's world-class Power BI data visualization and dashboarding tools, and they've seamlessly integrated with Power BI. You go into Power BI and you look at their data connectors, and you'll see that Solver is actually one of their native connectors out there. So you can take advantage of all this great power in that to produce your data. And we'll show you just a little bit of that as we go on here. So this is a visual of how it works. And if you can see my cursor, in the middle you have your data warehouse. So underneath here are all your different data sources. So the neat thing about this is it's not just financial data. I can pull data in from my payroll system for budgeting personnel cost. And I can pull in data from my CRM system for budgeting sales costs, and budget and reporting against those sales costs. So you could pull statistics from the website if you wanted to. You have any data source you have that you want to be able to budget and report on, you can set that up to pull that into your data warehouse. You'll also notice, you may notice there's a little dotted line to the ERP at the bottom here. And what that's all about too is that you actually have the ability, if you're running Dynamics GP, for example, with some ERPs, where I can have a direct link between the ERP and the reporting, so I can bypass the data warehouse. But for the most part, what we're going to talk about today here is the data warehouse, because that's where you're going to store your budgets. And then from that, I drive all my data, or I can drive that. I have the data to drive these pieces, the reporting, budgeting, dashboards, and I don't have to worry about where that data is, or is it the right data. You've got essentially one source of truth. One final thing before we get into actually the product demo here is, as you can see here, so Solver is part of what they call a corporate performance management system. That's what these products are known as. There's several corporate performance management systems out there, and what you can see on this slide, though, this is a survey done by G2, which is consumer surveys. Now this is a little bit older, so it's not entirely up to date. And I think in the most current one, Solver is not quite to the farthest right. But essentially what you're seeing here is the product with the highest customer satisfaction is Solver. And these products are all fairly similar. Adaptive Insights is another one, et cetera. But the bottom line, or the point I'm trying to make here, is that this product not only is very powerful and very useful, but it's also has one of the highest customer satisfaction ratings out there. And so with that, we're now going to go into a Solver demonstration. All right, let's talk about Solver. So this is the home page for Solver. On the left, you can see the main menu of the functionality that's out there. And just really quickly to go through that, what I'm going to go through today is I'm going to start out and pretend I'm like a budget manager and I'm creating budgets. And then then through that process, we'll also talk about, okay, let's say I'm a department head who's filling out a budget. Because this system's designed, you can do top-down budgeting, where maybe I have one or two people that do the whole budgeting process, and the system will handle that. Or I can do a distributed budgeting process, or bottom-up budget, where I can have several people involved in the budgeting process, where they roll up and submit budgets via workflow and to create the final budget. And we're going to actually show you, I'm going to show you both as we go through here today. But it starts at the data warehouse where I store the data. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll talk a little bit about the workflow, how you can set up workflow. We'll talk about the assignments. So when the workflow is set up, people get assigned different worksheets that they've got to fill in and processes they need to do. After we've talked through that, we will talk a little bit about the budgeting. We'll actually create the budget worksheets and then we'll talk about reporting, and we'll talk about archive. Archive is where your end users, once reports are published and budgets are published, where people can view them. So let's start with the data warehouse. As you can see here, these are what they call modules. So I can set up and track as many different modules as I need. And Solver comes with some standard modules out there. Right out of the box, you're going to come with a general ledger, summary, and detail. Each of the and then within these, but you can add payables, receivables. I can add analytics. You can see there's lots of different information I can store in my data warehouse. Within each of these, you've got different types of information. So you can see, for example, on the general ledger, I've got my chart, my account numbers, I have my transactions, I've got departments, entities, all this different financial dimensions that I might want to track or filter reports on or filter budgets on or enter budgets against. So if I'm entering budgets against departments or locations or programs or grants, those would be components within this data warehouse that would be set up. Now, how that data gets in is actually pretty straightforward, because Solver comes with a lot of standard integrations. This right now, this demo model I've got is using a CSV import, but when you start your budgeting process, typically you're going to pull your actuals in. And again, you might pull in personnel data, you might pull in some sales data from your CRM system, but you have data you're going to pull in to start with on that budget. Now, and the nice thing about Solver, though, is it has all these pre-connectors out there that you can use to pull information in. So you can see, for example, here, in addition to CSV files, I can pull data from Microsoft Dynamics Business Central, 365 Business Central. I can pull information from Dynamics GP. I can pull stuff from, there's a gateway connector. So if I have data sitting on in a SQL server on my in-house server, I can pull that through the gateway. I can access Sage Intacct data. I can access QuickBooks data. I can access SQL Server directly if it's in the cloud. So there's lots of different ways that I can, or connectors here that are out there. And what you do is we take these connectors, we map it to your data, and then we can set up jobs to automatically pull that data in on a scheduled basis, or you can run it on a manual on-demand process if you want to do that. But the key is that I can get that information into my system to create the budgets, but also then on an ongoing basis if I want to use this as my reporting tool for actuals versus budgets. So you start out with the data warehouse and getting the data. Once you've got the data, then in the budgeting area, you're going to go in, and this is where you're going to create all of your forms and budget templates and worksheets that you're going to use to fill in the budgets that are out there. And you can see, actually, if I click on this first one here, budget process overview, you can have a very detailed process. You don't have to set something up like this and follow this, but you can see here it's a very detailed process where I start out with my goals, and I do some forecasting, I do some bottom up, top down. I then have my department heads enter expenses, etc. So we're going to kind of walk through that as we go through this today. But all of these worksheets can be created. One of the really nice things about Solver too that I really like is you can create all of these in Excel on your desktop or your laptop, and then you essentially publish them up to the Solver service. So once so I can take advantage of all the functionality in Excel and benefit from that, but I don't have to, but yet I have all the controls in place that you've got by having it managed by the Solver service and having people access it through the web rather than through Excel. So you're going to get the best of both worlds. Microsoft does the same thing with Power BI. They give you the Power BI desktop so you can create your Power BI dashboards, but then you publish them up if you want to share them with other people. Okay, so there's the budgeting. Then workflow. So we come into the workflow, and the workflow here is these are the assignments. You're going to set up assignments and you're going to budget. So if I click on this first one and hit edit, for example, you can see here, I can go in and I can assign a name. I can decide who approves it, who reviews it, what parameters we're going to use in terms of what dimensions, and then which users are going to get assigned this. So this is assigned to me right now. I'll go ahead and close that up. And then once these workflows are set up, you can use them to then assign those budget worksheets that were created in the budgeting section. You can use those assignments to assign those to people. So starting here so these orange ones here are basically our sub processes that are sub processes of the workflow process that you're going to use to enter information. So we start with our corporate goals and strategy, for example. And you come into here and you can see here, there's 3 different worksheets that I would fill in, but I'm just going to go to the first one, strategy and goals. And here I've got some documented strategy, but if I click on the goals section, this is where I could put in maybe some strategic goals if I had them that I'm trying to achieve with my budget. So this is, so after I create my budget, I'm going to compare them to my strategic goals and see if I hit those goals. Okay. So you start out with that. Then maybe the next thing you're going to do possibly is I've got, let's say you're on a calendar year and it's like and it's September and I have actuals through September, but I don't have actuals for October, November, December. So I need to forecast those out to make sure that I have accurate numbers to use for basing my budget for next year. So I use this worksheet, and maybe I provide this worksheet and have my department heads fill this in and update it. So I tell them, okay, here's your actuals through September. Here's what you originally forecasted for October, November, December. Do you want to make any adjustments to this? So when you see the yellow are things that I could go in and I could override and I could change if I wanted to do that. But the neat thing, another nice thing about all these worksheets is you see I've got different tabs down here. I can put directions and I can tell them exactly how to fill this in as they do it. And the only things they can update are these fields right here. So it's very controlled out there as you do it. So that's an example of assignments as step 2. Is having them fill that in. Now, once I've done that, maybe now that I've got all those actuals and forecasts updated, now maybe I want to give them something to start with. So now I'm coming back in as the budget manager, and I'm going to do a little top-down or break-back budget to fill in some forms for them. So I come into here, and what you see on this worksheet, and this is something that's somewhat unique to Solver. So there's budgeting systems that allow you to roll up, but there's not many that let you do a break back or push down. So what I'm going to do here is you see what I've got here. I've got a column that has actual year to date for my revenues and expenses. And then I've got my budget for the remaining periods that we just talked about a minute ago to give me my forecast. It's out there for how I think we're going to finish the year. Now I want to create this budget for next year, for 2022. So what I can do is just come up here and say, you know, I'm going to say my desired net income. I'm looking to hit 3.1 million. And what it did is it actually took that 3.1 million and spread it out based upon last year for every month and every account. So you can see over here to the right, as I scroll across, here's my 2022 budget. So I've got a starting point for this. And I could run this, and this would run for every department. So then when I send it out to the department heads, they have something to start with if I want to do that. I don't have to do that. I can have them start out with a zero budget and do zero-based budgeting if I want to do that. So we got that. Then we've got I'm not going to save any changes there. So then I've got to set up, I'm still the budget manager. I'm going to set up some assumptions here. And you define what those assumptions are, but maybe I'm going to say for next year, I know my payroll stuff, my payroll taxes are going to go up, my benefits are going to go up. Maybe I want to make some adjustments here to some travel assumptions, etc. These are key parameters that you use to drive your budgets so that your users don't have to worry about that. They can just go in and fill in their information and these like number of people they're going to hire, and then it calculates on that. All right. So now I go and now I'm ready to send this back out to the department. So now I send it to the department, and now they can fill in their different pieces of the budget. So maybe they're going to go in and do personnel. So the neat thing about this is you do this by department. So I'm in department 100 right here, and here's my employees for department 100. So I can do this. I can do this at the role level, or I can do it at employee level. The neat thing, the employee level gives you obviously a lot more control over it. But let's say I wanted to give somebody a raise. I want to give maybe the CFO a raise because CFOs are great. I love CFOs. I'm going to raise them to 250,000. And I'm going to say that raise is going to start in August. And I'm going to give them, actually that's all I need to do is do that. And maybe, actually what I did here, I messed up there. I should have put that back, 85, let's do this. What I really want to do is say, we're going to give a raise. Sorry here, I wanted to do like a 20% raise. Let's do that. So we'll take them to 222. And then, and so now when I scroll across, watch what happens. Here's my budget, and here's their old salary. And then when they hit August, it's increasing their salary, but it's also going to increase all their benefits and stuff associated with that because I have those in there. And if I wanted to add somebody in, I can just come in here and I could go back and I could add somebody. Let's say I'm going to add a new employee, and it'll come in and say to be hired. And you could tell them the start date of when they hired, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you set up these templates, and then I can update them. It's very easily as I go through. And you can change, and again, you can do this by department or department. So I could go up here and run this for a different department, and I could change that. So, so you do that same thing. I can update, I can have a capital budget. I could have other expenses. And I want to show you something here real quick on other expenses on this that's really powerful on the system is, notice here I got all my expenses, but notice some of these have little red carrots on them. And what that is there's actually more detail behind it. So you have the ability, your department heads could say, okay, I'm gonna budget my conferences and seminars. And what they did on that is down here, if you see where it says spreading and line item details, if I click that, it'll spread it out. That dollar amount, that 1,571, is actually made up of a bunch of line items. So maybe I could say conference A, conference B, conference C, and put estimates in there of what I think those are actually going to be by month. And particularly if on a certain month, I'm going to go to a conference and I'm going to have some different expenses. I would go in and I would budget for that and put those breakdown in here. So now you've got that in your budget of the detail of where these numbers came from. So in addition to that, they could put notes in there and put comments, because you have the ability to put comments in to explain what this is and what the breakdown is on these comments out there for the line items. So very powerful, and now that's going to roll all the way up to the top. So if somebody's doing this at the department level and I'm reviewing it at the top level, I'm going to be able to see all those comments that were in there. And then let me close this up for a second. And just to give you an idea of how that works. So I'm sorry, I know what I want to say. I was trying to think what I wanted to do as the next step. Sorry about that. I kind of hesitated a minute. The other thing I wanted to say is once they're done with that budget, so any one of these budgets, whatever it is, once they're done with it, they can just say they've completed it, and then it's going to submit it up for approval. and review. And if they want to download this to Excel and maybe work with it in Excel, just to play around first, they could do that too. But when they actually, but the budgets actually are going to come into here, and this is what's going to roll up. All right. So we talked about that process. You go through all that process. We can also budget balance sheet and cash flow, and you notice on the balance sheet it's very, the system tries to fill in as much as it can once you've done that P&L. And so there's just limited fields that I can update in here or adjust if I need to. But I can actually do my budget and cash flow, which is another thing it's hard to do when you're doing it in Excel, particularly if you're trying to revise things and run revised budgets. Okay, once you're done, all this stuff gets submitted, it goes up. And again, if I'm the budget manager, I can see the status at any time. If I clicked on this department and, for example, and hit status, I can see exactly where we're at. Which ones are new, haven't been touched, which ones are in progress, which ones have been completed. And then I can see who's responsible for that. And if there's a problem, I can contact people and I can follow up with them to make sure we get those budgets in. So very powerful from that perspective. Once the budgets are created, then you can go ahead and you can report on them. The system lets you create all kinds of different reports. You can categorize those reports. If I go down here and look at the annual budget reports, for example, these are all different budget reports that are out there. Budget accuracy analysis is a really neat one because I can actually go out and I can see for the last few years, how accurate have we been? What's our variance? So I can look by department, how accurate have they been at budgeting and review that and see who's good and who isn't at doing the budgeting process. So a lot of really nice features and cool features in here. But the final piece I want to show before I turn this over to Jessica is the archive functionality. Because the archive, typically what you do is you manage you have like power users or admin users who create the budgets, create the reports, manage the budgeting process. But then once the budgets are created, I can put them in the archive and publish them up to the archive. And then I can have users who are just basically reporting only, or maybe budgeting and reporting users that can go in and see those. And so in the archive, the way the archive works, it's a little bit like your email and Outlook. The ones that are in bold are reports I haven't looked at yet. But the reports I have looked at, I can see quickly because those are not bold that are out there. But let's say that your budget manager had created, your budgets are all done, and the budget manager says to the CEO, okay, you can look at the budget now, take a look at the budget presentation. You can take these reports, you can categorize them in what are called playlists. So here's a playlist for all of the budget reports that I want to show my CEO. And then the CEO can come in here and just say, show playlist. And when you do that, now what I've got is down here at the bottom are all of those reports in the playlist. And I can start at the first one. So here's my table of contents. Then I can go look at my strategic KPIs. And I can see, okay, here's those strategic KPIs. What was our budget? What was the goal? So remember those goals we set. So we can see how we're doing against those goals. Then I can go in and look at my revenue, and I can see how that's doing for the prior year, current year, the budget. Where what does that look like? Then maybe they could look at the operating expenses and cash. Maybe I've got I want to look at now at the full budget. So I look at the full budget here, and I can have some graphs showing where do we stand. Here's my budget. Here's my actuals for 2020, here's my 2021 budget. And I've got it down here in a little more detail with the variances. It's color coded so I can see which ones might be an issue if I want to look at that. So all this stuff is available. Here's my balance sheet, etc. And if I want all the detail over at the far right, I have a transaction analysis option I can click on. It takes a second for this one to come up here. And here I can see all the detail. Now, it would depend on what my rights are. Obviously, you can set security to control what people can see and can't see. But here I could go in and see the detail. Here's the personnel budget for every department. Here's my capital expenses. Here's my travel, and et cetera. So makes it's really not only a powerful tool for managing the budgets, but it's a powerful tool for making that information available. And you can even link this stuff to PowerPoint, so you can automatically generate your PowerPoint slides for your presentation, maybe for your board presentation you're going to do. So that's a breakdown of, or that's a little bit of the kind of the overview. I know I went relatively fast there. Normally this is about an hour and a half presentation. We're squeezing it into 50 minutes. But I hope that, you know, if you guys want to see more, we're happy to show you that. But what I'd like to do now is the next step here is turn this over to Jessica, and Jessica can show you how you can use, you know, you can create these reports and these budgets. And I mean, she's going to focus on the report side, but it's the same concept for your budget worksheets and how easy it is to do that. And then, like I say, you can publish those back up. So with that, we'll go ahead and we will turn that over to Jessica. Jessica, you want to share your screen?
So now we are going to start with a basic Excel report. So once you have Solver installed, there now is a tab within Excel called Solver Reporting. When you launch it, you can create a new blank one. And then once we create the new blank one, we can upload the report and it will publish up into our Solver area, which is what James was going over just now. To create a report, normally, this is how Excel opens up, but you click on the Report Designer tab, and then we have all of our functions and modules of data listed here. Notice you can do the general ledger, which is what we'll focus on, but you can also perform reports regarding with utilizing your accounts receivable, payables, payroll, and any other items that are attached to your data warehouse. So within General Ledger, we're going to expand out our General Ledger folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a basic report and create a simple trial balance type of situation. I'm going to take my account and I'm going to plop it into a cell. And what happens is you are then prompted to, if you want, create your selection grouping for your report. I want to group based on my rows, so based on my account. But you could also group them on cells or columns, but you can do that at a later time. So when I plot my account here, let's just say we also want to show our account description. And I'm going to expand out my columns, which you'll have to play around with once you are actually run the report so that you make sure that it's in line with. After that, we are then going to add our values. So I'm going to create a report that is more of a high scale, just an annual amount. So if we scroll down on our general ledger here, you'll notice these little coin options. You'll have annual amount, monthly amount, or other amounts. If we go ahead and we pull our annual amount over, and I'll plop it here, and I'm going to use this for my year-to-date amount, which you then have to click on your little period functions down here to then create a column such as this that gives you your header of year-to-date. What this header does is it then pulls in that period amount for that specific amount. If you don't use these period functions, it's not going to operate correctly. It's not going to pull in anything if you just type the word year-to-date. Let's go ahead and we will add another column and we'll call it last year-to-date. So we'll put that over here. And we'll go back to our general ledger and we'll pull in our annual amount column also. So that's a very basic, simple looking amount. We'll also add a variance column. And this uses basic Excel functionality. We'll use this one minus this cell to get our variance. And even though it says there's a problem with the value, there's not really a problem with the formula. It's just when we run it, it'll work properly. So we'll go ahead and expand that out. We'll also add a couple of formatting things here. So we'll just highlight those cells, format our cells, and use accounting. I'm also gonna format this to be centered and bold. And that's very simple, very basic. We're gonna go ahead and we'll add a sum total here. Notice down here, when I right click, it says one-stop reporting, and then we're gonna create our sum for that annual amount. And we'll go ahead and do the same for this one. And then we'll do our variance calculation again. And format those cells. Now, when we run this, let's go ahead and see what happens. As you can see here, it ran with my year-to-date totals and my last year-to-date, and then it created my variance. So this is a very basic trial balance type of situation. If we go back to our design mode here, and we click on our layout editor up here, we can add a couple more functionality. This plus sign is an expanding row, which means that it will allow you to select specific accounts, or just as you saw in the generation that we just did, it used all the accounts. If you notice up here on the cell, E, which is related to year to date, and then F, which is related to last year to date, it's based on a parameter of current period. If we wanted to add additional parameters regarding periods, we can click on report parameters at the top. A lot of times it'll default with auto parameters of the period itself, so then you can choose which period you want to run it for. You can also, if you wanted to sort by account and then you wanted to sort by account category, all you have to do is go up to here, expand it out, and pull in the account category. This will then filter it, but you could remove that from there. Click on the little grouping tab here, and we can remove the account description because we don't want to sort by that. We just want to sort by account category and account. And here are your, you can move it so that it takes priority over the other. And then you can also sort it by ascending, descending, or north sorting. So once I do that change, and we go ahead and run it again. You can see, probably not, but it did sort it by our account category. So it put all of our assets, if it was in that account category asset, and our accounts payable, so our liabilities, our retained earnings, and then it grouped all of our profit and losses together, because that's how our data is built in our data warehouse. So that's a very basic report. It doesn't have your budgeting information, but it does have a very basic trial balance so that you can see how that process works. Now, if we go over to and create another report, that is based on our budgeting information, it'll look a lot like this. We created this report beforehand, and what it did, we created a revenue, and we selected we just want to see account descriptions because we don't want to see accounts. If you wanted to see accounts, you could also add that on here. So if we go to our Solver reporting tab, and we go to our layout editor, we'll be able to see that column C is based on the scenario actual. Column D is based on the budgetary valuation. Column G is based on our actuals also, but it's applied to year to date. And we're saying to use the period function at period. And then column H is based on our budgetary valuation also. On this row, we are talking about our revenue. This row, we're talking about this specific account, which is our cost of goods sold account. And then the last account are all the other expenses related to it. Notice that there's a range, which is using the colon there. So if we go ahead and we run this particular report, notice that there's a parameter now that we have to select. This is based on our date. So if we click our lookup, we can choose which date we want to use, which period. So once you choose that period and click run, notice everything is expanded out. If we wanted to shrink it back up, we just have to click our little plus signs. And it'll give us a summary report of everything. And our budgetary valuations and our variances. Once you create a report, it's very easy to copy and save and reuse this report. At this point, once you create this report, you can upload the report with the changes to the BI360 area or the solver area. It can then be used and assigned to different people in different scenarios, and then used for future reporting. At this time, Kate is going to send off our last CPE so that you can finish that up. James, do you have any other information you want to share with everyone regarding this?
So, you mentioned the BI360. I just want to make sure everybody knows. So this product used to be called BI360, but it was a lot of people were confusing it with Microsoft's Power BI dashboarding tool. So as the beginning of this year, they rebranded the product and it is now just known as Solver. So if you hear us sometimes say BI360, that's just old habit. And when we do that, this is the same product. This is a Solver product. So this is a true cloud product. All the updates are automatic. You don't have to worry about any upgrades or updates. It's all in the cloud. You can access it from anywhere, any device, anytime. So it's a very, very powerful tool to have in your set of tools as you're going through that. So are there any questions? We went fairly fast, but we wanted to give you a good overview.
Of course, if there are any questions, you can always reach out to me, kwatts@manersolutions.com, or Jessica or James. Either of the three of us can help you out with some of those questions you might have in regards to Solver. Jessica and James, do you have anything else to share today?
I don't, but thanks everybody.
Okay.
Appreciate the opportunity to show this to you. We'd love to talk to you more. If you'd like to learn more, just reach out. We'd be happy to talk to you about it. Exactly.
Jessica?
Nope, we're all set.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. Thank you for joining us for today's Connect Symposium session. Have a great day.